sorry. So yeah, I think 16. Welcome back. We're slightly more comfortable today, kind of lounging a little bit, because we're here to talk about some movies. Yeah. Before we get started, welcome back to our channel. I am Craig.
And I'm David.
And we are
Shelf Possessed.
We're so glad that you're back. We're so glad that you clicked on another video. Before we get started, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, just right down below, click the little notification bell. It'll give you notifications whenever we post a new video. And when you're done, if you liked the video, we just ask that maybe you hit a like or that you share the video if you can. All right? So, we're going to do something that's a little bit away from books today, but it's still related to books. So it isn't that far away from books, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we're going to be chatting about the Fear Street movies. If you watched our last video, which is the books that made us readers, we talked about the Fear Street book series.
And how much we loved them as adolescents, young adults.
Yeah.
We really, really did love those books. And
they were formative for both of us. Yeah.
And I think once we heard that they were making a movie or a trilogy of them, we got extremely excited. It was over 30 years in the making.
Yeah. We were really looking forward to it when the announcement came out that they were being made into 3 different movies. Originally, I think they were supposed to be 3 different directors, and it was kind of like an anthology movie series, but we didn't really have any details about the movies when it first came out, when it was first announced, right? We just knew that one of the directors was Leigh Janiak, and that she grew up with the books as we did, and so we knew that there was probably going to be at least some reverence there.
Or so we thought.
Yeah. So what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of break down our initial thoughts to the news and the trailer a little bit, and then we'll go film by film because it's 3 films. So it's 1994, 1978, and then 1666. So we'll talk about our thoughts on each film. We'll kind of keep those a little bit brief, and then we'll kind of talk about our overall opinion of the series because we both have varying opinions of what we watched. So, yeah. So when the trailer was announced, I think it was like, what was it? Middle of June when the trailer came out?
Maybe?
Yeah. What did you think of the trailer when you saw it?
Well, I got really excited because I knew that they were coming out in the summer of 2021. And I think once that trailer hit, I got extremely excited. Like I said, it was like I've been waiting over 30 plus years for either a movie version or a TV series to come out because I love these books so much. So once that trailer came out, I was extremely excited. And then I sent him the trailer, and then everybody that I knew who loved this series growing up, I sent them a trailer. So
right. Well, when I saw the news that it was, the news and it was in the trailer, that they had separated these into 3 movies, which we already knew, but then the movies got subtitles, which was 1994, 1978, and 1666. I knew instantly where those year dates came from. I mean, 1994 was obvious. The books came out around that time. I mean, they started in 89 and they, I think, continued until 98?
I think in the early 2000s.
Early 2000s. So I knew that movie was obviously in reference to that in some ways, the original book series. And then the 78 looked like it was set at a camp of some sort. And so I kind of had a reference point for Lights Out with Camp Nightwing. And then 1666 made sense because of
the Fear Street Saga.
Saga?
My Kansas came out. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Fear Street Saga.
The Fear Street Saga. Yeah, for sure. I think 1666 was pretty obvious. It was the Fear Street
Saga.
Yep. I went and grabbed it actually because this is but we only have book 2 of that book. So the Fear Street Saga is actually, I think, 6 or 7 books or 8 books maybe, but it talks about how Fear Street began. And so that choice of 1666 seemed obvious that we were going to go back to the origins of Fear Street. So when I saw that in the trailer, I was excited, and it looked like they were going to take storylines from multiple books and kind of jam them together to make one movie, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of what it looked like to me. Mm-hmm. But I could see in the trailer what the reference points were, which was exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or so we thought.
Yes. And then they released that opening scene with Maya Hawke. What did you think of that opening scene?
That's it. That was it. That was all I had.
Really?
I don't know. I liked the references to the books because she was working at a B. Dalton's, mm-hmm. and they kind of had the covers. Okay, in that bookstore, she walks by. We kind of see the covers of these Fear Street books, of the original Fear Street books with the original covers on them. Mm-hmm. That I liked a lot. I don't know. I think I can understand the references to kind of 90s horror at that time. But I don't know. I don't think it moved the needle.
When I saw that, though, I was like, okay, what books are these referencing? Like, what books is she using to tell these stories? Because I did a deep dive. I did an internet deep dive to see if she had mentioned, the director had mentioned at all what books she was using to base these movies on, and I could find nothing.
No. I think Fear Street was just an umbrella for these 3 films.
Yeah.
And that was it. I think that was my biggest problem.
But yeah.
So then I'm like, well, why call it Fear Street if we're not going to dig deep into what Fear Street is? So
when we got to the end of 1994, we were both pretty visibly upset. I think the movie on its own was a perfectly serviceable slasher movie.
I agree.
It had good gore, good thrills. I think that the plotting and the pacing was really nice of that first movie. But we both looked at each other and were like, but why call it Fear Street? Yeah. It definitely felt like Fear Street was just a marketing tool to put these movies under this umbrella.
Because, what I thought about, after we watched that first movie, and I think once I kind of wrapped my head around it, because I was just angry because I love these books so much growing up, that this specific movie, this trilogy, was not made for the Fear Street fans. No. This was not for us. This was for a new generation. I will tell you what I loved about them. There was there was queer representation.
Yes.
There was
that was not in the books. There was absolutely no queer representation in the books.
And a lot of the main characters were people of color, which in the books there's not hardly that many, right? So I think that's one thing that I think Lee Janiak did very well. I just wish that she would have connected the books to the movie.
So overall, 1994, not our favorite one of the 3 for sure. It was serviceable as a film, I think, and it did its job in its storytelling. But I don't think that it necessarily belonged with the Fear Street banner.
And I think the performances were great too.
Yeah. So should we talk about 1978?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 1978 is set in at Camp Nightwing, which is a camp that I think is between Shadyside and Sunnyvale. And it's Camp Nightwing is a direct reference to Lights Out. That camp that's in Lights Out is Camp Nightwing. And it is, Shadyside and Sunnyvale are coming together at camp, and they're about to do a color war. And it goes all night, and then some bad stuff starts happening.
Murder, mayhem.
Yeah.
Blood everywhere.
I think 1978 was my favorite of the 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I liked that one the most.
Okay.
Out of all of them.
Okay.
What the movies do really nicely is it functions almost like a series. Like a TV series, right? And in fact, I think it probably could have been a TV series. Because the first movie sets you up with all of the initial information in 1994. And then 1978 goes backwards in time, obviously, but informs what you already know about from 1994. So it gives you more information, and it gives you a deeper look into the town and what's going on and who these people are.
And I think I like the way that was constructed, right? I kind of liked. I didn't think I was going to like that. It was almost like she was inspired by a Quentin Tarantino movie, because his movies are kind of told, kind of go back and forth in time and stuff. So that's what I appreciated about especially the second one.
Well, both of the soundtracks for both of these movies were great too.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. She picked very good music. And in fact, we watched a couple interviews with her where she said that the playlists for these movies were done before the actual scripts were done. And I could kind of see that.
Okay, I like the music very much. That took me back. Let's just go back to 1994 for just 1 second. Okay, 1994. One of the biggest problems I had, besides, I mean, it's not really a Fear Street tie-in, but was the music every 5 seconds. It was like, let's remember, we're still in 1994.
Right.
Okay, and then I think that got a little too much for me.
Really, though, we're in the 90s. It didn't feel as heavy-handed as 1994. Mm-hmm. Like, the choices felt subtle. They didn't feel like they were banging me over the head. Mm-hmm. And they really opened up the lore of Fear Street and, like, why Fear Street is the way that it is, even though there's actually literally zero reference to the street of Fear Street. But I think the performances in that one were great as well. Mm-hmm. Sadie Sink from Stranger Things.
The sisters were great.
Yeah, they did a great job. Yeah. And I really liked that one a lot, of the three. And I actually came to a pretty good conclusion in my mind that helped me wrap my brain around the entire trilogy, which I'll talk about at the end, and made me like it more. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then 1666, what did you think?
That was my favorite out of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was just the atmosphere and just that it was almost, I don't know, when we think about witches, we think about that time, and I think Lee Janiak kind of did well in that area for this film. But I think it was the mood, it was the atmosphere, and it was also the performances as well. And I think it was, I believe it was the most brutal out of the three. And a lot of themes that are, currently going on right now in 2021. Yeah. So I kept thinking about those things as well while watching this film. But I think film-wise and just the way that it was shot, I think this was my favorite out of the three.
And the thing about it is, it's like all three of these movies are dealing with tropes that we've seen before, right? They're talking about or showing us things that we've seen before. I mean, we've seen summer camp slasher movies. We've seen the groups of teens coming together to fight a killer. And we've seen the story about witches before. And all of those things have been well worn in media, in books, in movies, in TV. What I think that she did really well, especially with 1666, is that she kind of subverts that a little bit. Because, yes, there is witchcraft involved and there are witches involved, but that is not the only thing that we're watching. No. There's queer love and queer subtext to almost all of it, which I thought was amazing. And the interesting thing that she really does in that last movie is that she takes the actors from the first two and they are portraying these characters in 1666, which I thought was a really nice parallel.
All of the characters.
Yeah.
And all of the films.
Even like the girl's mother from 1994 was playing her mother in 1666. I thought those reference points were really, really nice.
What I loved about, this is one of the things that I loved about it. I wished that these films were made when we were coming of age, because I was thinking about that too while we were finishing. I'm like, I wish I would have had that growing up, to have this kind of queer love story and these queer teenagers coming of age during this time, because I think that would have said, you know what, I'm going to be okay.
Right.
So I think I was a little jealous, because I was like, damn, I wish I had this when I was 14 or 15 to watch.
Yeah. The other thing that people aren't talking about with these movies is that is present in all three of them. Maybe less in the second one, but it's there in all three of them. And I think that in horror films, we don't get outright queer representation very often. And that is something that is groundbreaking for these movies. And I'm glad that she did that. And I'm glad that it was part of it, Or
it's kind of it comes along with trauma or bullying or anything like that,
Or it's an allegory for something. Yeah. So overall, I think that the storytelling modes that she created and that she worked with ended up, for me, being successful. And the movies on their own, without the Fear Street banner, I thought were good. They were good horror films. I enjoyed watching all three of them. But my one gripe is that they had nothing to do with Fear Street, really. Yeah. The 1666 tries to talk about Sarah Fear, who is dealt with in this book, in this saga, and it kind of explained why there is a curse on Shadyside, which I appreciated that they went back to that.
Mhm.
But overall, I think that the references to Fear Street were little to none, basically, and that really bothered me a lot. And I am of two minds, I think, on it. Like, I think that we came to these movies, like we watched these movies because of the Fear Street title
Mhm.
and because we were so invested. I don't know that everyone did that. I don't know that everyone watched the movies because of that. Like I'd be interested in the demographic breakdown of the people who were Fear Street readers and the people who just like horror films that
Mhm.
came to these movies. I'd be interested to know what that
Or
is
even the
like.
generation that doesn't even know that these books exist.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. The theory that I came up with after the second movie, which you may not agree with,
Okay.
and I think that what allowed me to like the movies on their own was that I took them out of the reference of the books. So I said, these movies to me feel like another book, right? So my way of looking at it was that these were another book in the series, telling another story about Shadyside that was not one of these books that we were familiar with. So if I could take myself out of that and not expect to see the books that I knew, but instead expected a new story, almost like R.L. Stine wrote 3 new stories that were in the same universe, then I was able to allow myself to like it more.
Yeah, but connect it back to the books. I think that's the only thing.
But that's why I was able to like them, because if it's a new story, it doesn't have to necessarily connect back to all of these books.
Because most of the books, they all connect back to Fear Street.
Yeah.
Right?
Most of them, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And that to me that's the one of the main things I think the movie is missing, is that it doesn't talk about the actual Fear Street. Like, that is the thing that ties all the books together, and the town of Shadyside. All these people live in Shadyside together.
Why not just call it Shadyside?
Well, yeah. And I read an interesting article, which I'll link in the box down below, that was talking about how these movies should have actually probably been a series and should have in fact been an anthology series.
Mm-hmm.
And we just started watching American Horror Stories, which is a single episode anthology series. And that is what I think would have really served this well. So let me ask you this. If they do make more, will you watch them?
I don't know. Like, I think I would want to know more about them beforehand. I think because we didn't really know, we had like a brief synopsis of what each movie was going to be about in this trilogy. And in that you could probably think, okay, well, they could use this book, or they can use this book, or use these characters, which they did not. So I don't know. I think if I would have known that beforehand, because I just went in as a hardcore fan, and that's what I was expecting. And like I said at the beginning, these movies were not made for us, the fans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they were made for the general horror fan base in total.
Either that, or bringing in a new generation of readers, of viewers.
Which I hope that it does.
As long as they go back and they look at, the reference points in these books and say, okay, well, this used to be a book series. Let me go back and, buy some of those.
Well, and the problem with this, though, is that these books now so many of them are out of print. And like, we've been trying to complete our collection of these books, and to try and buy new ones, or even used copies of them, some people want upwards of $20 to $40 for books. And I do wish that they would do a reprinting of them, a reissuing of them. I also was telling our friend Dusty that I would love for them to create a collection of every book, and like a box set of every book. And I would purchase that in a heartbeat. I don't care if I have to make 18 payments. I would purchase that in a heartbeat. Okay, so to recap, for 1994, on a scale of 5 butcher knives being the best and 1 butcher knife being the worst, how many butcher knives do you give 1994?
Take Fear Street out of it, I would give it 3.
Okay, I would give it 4. So we have an average of about 3.5 butcher knives for 1994. Okay, 1978, how many butcher knives do you give it?
4.
Okay, I would agree. I give it 4 as well. So 4 for 1978. 1666.
5.
5 butcher knives.
5.
I'll give it. We didn't talk about the ending of it, because the ending of it goes back to the beginning and ties up some things, which is great. So I would also give it a 4. Okay, so we give it a 4.5.
I would give it a 5. Don't sleep on Gillian Jacobs.
Yeah, she's great. She's really good in the movie too. So, so those are our thoughts on the Fear Street movies. Did you watch them? Did you enjoy them? If you haven't, they're on Netflix. We'll link the link to the movies below as well if you want to watch those on Netflix. Tell us what you thought in the comments. Tell us if you liked them, if you didn't, if you agree with our kind of opinions on them. Yeah.
I also think what's great now, we can go watch them back to back.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll, I don't know, that may change my mind.
Right.
We should wait a few months.
We'll do a rewatch at some point.
Just spend a whole day watching.
Yeah.
All three.
Maybe during Halloween.
Yeah.
We'll do that in October. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, thank you for coming back to our channel. I know this is not a book, and this is not a video about books necessarily, but we wanted to include it because we were excited about these movies, and you just saw our Books That Made Us series all about the Fear Street books. So, thank you for coming and listening to us talk about these movies. We hope you enjoyed it. Go to our Instagram
at @shelf_possessed.
And if you haven't already, like the video, comment below, subscribe, all that stuff. We're so grateful that everyone's here. And we'll be back soon with our the part 1 of our July wrap-up since we've read so many books this month.
My.
Yeah. So we'll see you soon, and thanks for coming back.
Bye.
Bye.